Giving all praises to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rahakorash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders at Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations, as always, to the elect. News and prophecy, linking the things that are happening worldwide to the Holy Scriptures, so that the faithful elect, the remnant of Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, all right, can know and understand that all of the things that are happening in the world are a result of biblical prophecy, and not be confused and snared by the mass confusion being put out by the media, all right, and by the witches and warlocks that rule this world, that want your mind drifting in fear. All right, we do these videos to offer you assurance, stability. As the scriptures say, wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times. And it is very imperative that we stay stable in these times, as things are getting ready to take a drastic turn, as the powers that be are being exposed, also calling on their gods and their powers via the left-hand side. All right, the spiritual demon Satan works through the elites of this world, which is a wicked priesthood, all right, to cause confusion and chaos, as they have a plan pursuant to the book of Psalms, the 2nd chapter, to undermine the authority of the Most High, to set up his only begotten Son, Hamashiach Yahweh Shai, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, all right, as the ruler of this earth, along, all right, with a righteous priesthood, starting with the 12 disciples, the rest of the 144,000, all right, which is the tabernacle of David. Okay, after that, you will have the large multitude, which is the rest of the men, women, and children whom the Lord will have mercy on. But the beginning of the remnant starts, all right, with the 144,000 headed by the 12 disciples, which is a government that is ultimately going to rule on this earth. As a matter of fact, before we get into this, let's get the book of Isaiah, because what leads into the kingdom of heaven, okay, is a devastating war that's going to lead to the destruction of not only the land of Israel, but Babylon the Great, which is America, okay? And these things are all written in biblical prophecy. Let's get the book of Isaiah, chapter 9, okay? And as you can see, this chapter is headed the birth and reign of the Prince of Peace, which is Hamashiach Yahweh Shai. Okay, and we're going to start here in verse 5. It says, Isaiah 9 and 5, for every battle of the warrior is with confused noise and garments rolled in blood. But this, all right, this particular war that will lead, all right, unto the kingdom of heaven being set up on the planet Earth shall be with burning and with fuel of fire. Fuel of fire. You see that? So every ancient war was between men, you know, riding horses and having armor and swords and shields and all of these various different things. But we're living in a time where knowledge has increased, all right, and nations now have, you know, armor and, you know, weaponry that is capable of blowing up lands, countries, all right. And as the scriptures say in the book of Isaiah, the 54th chapter, let's get that. I believe that's Isaiah 54 and 16, right? Behold, I have created the smith, all right? And the modern day smith is the scientist, and the Germans were at the forefront of a lot of this technology that led to them being able to create nuclear missiles, all right, which, you know, the spirit wasn't put on him to keep this technology to himself. You know, he sold it off, and now all nations have this power. Behold, I have created the smith, all right, that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. For I have created the waster to destroy. Okay, and ultimately that is the iron weapon, as the scriptures call it, right? That is going to be used, all right, to basically get this war going. Okay, so again, Isaiah 9 and 5, for every battle of the warrior is with confused noise and garments rolled in blood. That's how ancient wars took place. But this shall be with burning and fuel of fire. And then this leads into what Yahweh Shai was born to do. For unto us a child is born and a son is given. That's Hamashiach Yahweh Shai. Okay, and his birth led to the death, burial, and resurrection. This is why King Herod wanted to take him out before he grew up to be that sacrifice for us. Because the blood that was shed by Hamashiach Yahweh Shai guarantees that the elect are covered and that our sins can no longer be punished. So now we can walk freely, all right, on our path to immortality, all right, without the mindset of constant condemnation. Although we feel bad about our sins and we correct ourselves constantly, we know and understand that Yahweh Shai's sacrifice has taken care of what Satan seeks to accuse. And he's getting ready to try to accuse, all right, on a level we haven't seen. So we have to prepare our souls for temptation. We have to prepare our souls for what this man is getting ready to do, because he's in a conundrum. He's caught between a rock and a hard place, and he can only go forward with this plan. Okay, and as he's moving forward with his plan, he's finding out that ultimately it's a lot. So he's conjuring up demons. He's allowing certain information to come out so that he can openly call on Satan. All right, and these different demons and all of this confusion we see. All right, he's offering up sacrifices, all kind of stuff is going on. But again, Yahweh Shai, all right, as you can see here, and the government shall be upon his shoulders. See, and what is that government? As you go down to verse 7, so we can get into the information of the increase of his government and peace, there shall be no end upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and justice from henceforth even forever. The zeal of Yahweh will perform this. So it's the Lord's determination that Yahweh Shai sets up a righteous government that will bring forth peace and justice. But before that takes place, right, there's going to be a big heap of confusion. All right. The implementation of the MOTB, World War III, which all of these things are starting to happen at once at a faster pace, as the Heavenly Father has put a hardened heart on the cruel Lord that leads and rules this modern day Egypt. Okay. And of course, he's not operating on his own behalf. He's operating on behalf of the spiritual demon Satan, which the elite bankers, witches, and warlocks who rule everything ultimately have their hands in his back. As we can see, Trump announces 10% global tariff, keeping existing trade tariffs in place. So he's doing, Trump is operating in absolute chaos and pride. All right. As the scriptures say, a cruel Lord will rule Egypt. And this is what we're witnessing. And this is going to do this is not doing anything along with what Israel continuously is doing. All right. It's put a target on the back of the state of Israel in Babylon, which that's what we see happening worldwide. Now, I want to get this here in the book of Habakkuk. This is speaking of the ancient Chaldeans, which were the witches and warlocks of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, which we're living, as the scripture say in Isaiah 47, all right, under the daughter of the Chaldeans. All right. So that which is then is now. This is Habakkuk 1:9. They shall come all for violence. Their faces shall sup up as the east wind. They shall gather the captivity as the sand. Okay. This is what Babylon is set up to do for the bankers. That's why it's called the hammer of the earth. Okay. And with this whole board of peace, right, that Trump has established, all right, pretty much, even if he's, all right, if we go forward and there is another election and another president is put in place, the elder Ari Naza made a very good point that basically with this board of peace, even without him being president of the United States, all right, he rules the United States. He's basically trying to set up a situation where Babylon, okay, under the leadership of the small hats, okay, will override the UN, and basically they're setting up a new world order. Okay. And a lot of nations are looking down upon it, but some nations are joining basically as we enter into World War III, all right, and the plan of this new world order, they're not going to agree. But the Lord is putting the spirit on this man, all right, to move forward with some very, very, very important and strategic plans that are going to lead to World War III, as we see Iran being brought up, which we'll tap into that in this lesson, right? Let's go back here. Habakkuk 1 and 10, and they shall scoff at kings, all right? The ancient Chaldeans conquered, all right? And pretty much they got proud, okay? And this is the spirit that we're seeing this devil operate in these last days, okay? And right at the time of great pride is when the Lord dealt with these heathen rulers, right? And they shall scoff at kings. They're all around the earth, heaping, territories, setting up false flag wars, destroying the minds of the people, scoffing at kings, and the princes shall be a scorn unto them. And they shall deride every stronghold, which Iran is one of the last strongholds that they need to deride and take over. But as they are trying to do this, they're being met with some oppositions that are going to be a hindrance, all right, and a reason for war, right? And they shall heap up dust and take it, resources, okay? Then shall his mind change, right? And he shall pass over and offend, imputing his power unto his God, openly worshiping Satan. The Lord has put a hardened heart. His mind has changed. Just like, let's get the book of Daniel, the 4th chapter, right? In the 30th verse, right before the Lord judged Nebuchadnezzar, what did he say, right? Daniel 4 and 30, let's read it in the NLT. It says, let's see what the AMP says. The king said thoughtfully, is not this the great Babylon? Okay, remember scripturally there are 3 Babylons. You have Babel at the Tower of Babel at Nimrod. Then you have the Neo-Assyrian Babylonian Empire, which this is what we're reading about here, all right, which was taken down by the Medes and the Persians, not by, great, because this Babylon the Great we live in now, which is the 3rd Babylon mentioned in the scriptures, is prophesied to be taken out by fire. See, the Neo-Babylonian Empire was not taken out by fire. All right, the Tower of Babel was not taken out by fire. We are living in Babylon the Great. As I just watched the video where the Elder Ishiar from Charlotte he did a video going into these people who are watching us, and the Lord is putting the spirit on some of them to figure things out. Okay, it's not like we want to make like everything is about us, but the Lord has put the spirit on his prophets, okay, to basically be at the forefront of the changing of the minds of the world. Okay, everybody's mind is changing, and people are starting to see this leadership in this world for what it is. But he talked about in that lesson, which you should check it out. Let me bring it up. As a matter of fact, in this lesson here, GMS All Precepts, this individual here is going into how basically AI, right? Which if you've been watching my videos, this is a talking point that, we constantly go into, right? That we're rebuilding Babel. This time it's AI. Okay. So we're living now in Babylon the Great. So here, right, tapping back into what I'm going into at this point, in Daniel 4 and 30, before the Lord humbled Nebuchadnezzar, what was his mindset? Okay. Daniel 4 and 30, the king said thoughtfully, is not this the great Babylon, which I myself have built as the royal residence and the seat of government by the might of my power and by the honor and glory of my majesty? See that? He was proud. And when you read the Lord humbled his ass, man. See? The Lord humbled him, and Esau, Edom, is getting ready to be humbled and exposed as a beast that he is. All right. And as we just read in the book of Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, his mind is changing. He has to go forth with his new world order. He has to show his alliance to the spiritual demon Satan openly. All right. So that he can, because Satan requires sacrifice. And what he's doing to the people worldwide, those are sacrifices. What you see happening in Hollywood, in the entertainment world, and Epstein, all of these things are sacrifices. Habakkuk 1 and 11, then shall his mind change. Okay, he's no longer, playing with you people with this whole Christian talk. I mean, he'll throw it out there here and there, to pacify the average American people, because that's what they were bred to believe, in this whole white supremacist, rhetoric that has been established. So to keep them feeling like they have a piece of the pie within the whole scenario of this new world order, they bring out the Christian nationalist talking point. But this man has nothing to do with the Holy Scriptures, and he's not ruling, all right? So when you deal with these small hats and these so-called Christians, all they're doing is using the Bible to justify war. And now we're seeing that they really worship Satan. Okay? Then shall his mind change, and he shall pass over and offend, right? Imputing his power unto his God, who's their God? Okay? Satan, right? And the Lord is putting the spirit on this man to do things that are going to lead to all of these nations gathering together, all right, to destroy. World War III is imminent. Now, remember, World War III is not going to take place until the MOTB is put in place. But we will see skirmishes, wars, rumors of wars, all right, in particular back and forths that we'll discuss some of those things in this lesson, because when he officially goes into Iran, we may see talking points and back and forths with this whole Iran thing, right? But again, as this article says, how Iran plans to strike back is the part of the equation that people should be focusing on. So while, you have Israelite camps and leaders who fell out and still trying to, have relevance and, are talking about everything else and themselves and this and that, and, trying to destroy the ministry, changing the narrative, trying to save the heathen, prophecy is being fulfilled day in and day out. And your leaders should be giving you understanding of these things, because these are the things that are going to lead to what matters, which is the kingdom of heaven. Okay? So these are the things we should be focusing on, man. See? And I just wanted to play this. Although this has nothing to do with Iran, Trump announces a 10% global tariff. This nigga has put a tariff on the world because he couldn't get his way. All right, showing you the Lord is putting a spirit on this man to just operate in utter and complete foolishness in these last days.
In actuality, while I am sure that they did not mean to do so, the Supreme Court's decision today made a president's ability to both regulate trade and impose tariffs more powerful and more crystal clear rather than less. I don't think they meant that. I'm sure they didn't. It's terrible. And to think that the Democrats who oppose this only because they want to go the opposite way, they'd like to pack the court. They want to put on 21 people. They want to pack the court, pack the Supreme Court. Maybe they should do it. Maybe they would be better off if they did it. They want to pack the court. They want to do anything to hurt our country. There will no longer be any doubt in the income coming in, and the protection of our companies and country will actually increase because of this decision. I don't think the court meant that, but it's the way it is. Based on long-standing law and hundreds of victories, and even, as I was pointed out before, even thousands of victories over the years, to the contrary, the Supreme Court did not overrule tariffs. They merely overruled a particular use of IEEPA tariffs. And essentially, it's the use to get a fee. I can do anything I want with IEEPA, anything. I just can't charge anybody for it.
I mean, you can keep listening, but this nigga has put a 10% global tariff on the world, right? Because he couldn't get his way. All right, showing you that eventually all of these moves that we see being made are going to lead to what prophecy says, man. Jeremiah 50:9, for lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country, all right? And that's going to be ultimately under the authority and leadership of Russia, which are creating their own beast system. All right. And we have even the Arab countries talking about creating their own NATO. These are things that are happening right before our very eyes, because all of these things are being done in preparation. All right. And they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. Their arrows shall be as a mighty expert man. None shall return in vain. And Chaldea shall be a spoil. All that spoil her shall be satisfied, said the Lord. And a lot of people who read this will say, well, this is talking about the ancient Babylon, because it says Chaldea. Well, again, let's get Isaiah 4:47. All right, this is why the Lord has set up the prophets to give understanding, because again, Jeremiah 50 and 51 were letters written by Jeremiah, okay, to the captives at Babylon. And when you read the particulars of it, as we just read a part of it, the judgment on this Babylon is not in line with what we read in Daniel the 5th chapter, all right, where the Neo-Babylonian Empire was taken out by the Persians and the Medes. There was a few, strategic moves made, a few people put to death by the sword, but ultimately it was not fire. It was not accompanying nations going against her and destroying her. So this is speaking of a future prophecy, Isaiah 47:1. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. See? Sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. So this is the daughter of the Chaldeans that we are reading about in prophecy, which speaks to America, Babylon the Great. And they're being led by the small hats, all right, and drugged into a war that, again, they are not prepared for. So all of this stuff we're seeing going forth with Iran is a part of a bigger plan to bring us into World War III. This is the book of Joel 3, all right, and 1. For behold, in those days and at that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, all right, meaning the Lord is ultimately going to take us out of our captivity, all right, it will be marked by what? I will gather also all nations and bring them into the valley of Yahweh Shaphat, the valley of decision, all right, which where all of this is taking place is a part of that region where it's all going to be kicked off, okay? It says, and I will plead with them there for my people Israel and for my heritage, all right, for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations that have parted my land. So all these nations have had a part in our destruction, our taking down, all right? When we get the book of Psalms 83 real quick, and we'll get into the points and the true articles. I just showed that video to show you that this man he's on a, his heart is hardened. You will put a tariff on the world, okay? Showing you that this is Babylon the Great. Because what did Babylon the Great, when you read about this Babylon the Great in Revelation the 18th chapter, Revelation 17 and 18, it says, and the woman, which is the whore, Babylon the Great, which thou sawest, is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Now these Christians are saying, well, Babylon can't be America because it calls it a city. All right, well, you are a citizen of America, Babylon the Great. This is a big, gigantic city, all right, and it's divided into 10 FEMA regions or 10 zip code regions, right, 0 to 10. And this is that great city. There is no one city nowhere in the world that rules over the kings of the earth. This is speaking of Babylon. The fact that you can put a tariff on the world lets you know, right? You reign over the kings of the earth. See? But we're witnessing, all right, as prophecy unfolds, nations are establishing deals and orders outside of the dominance of the U.S., which the sword and the petrodollar, all right, was at the forefront of their dominance. But we're living in a time where all manner of things are happening, right, which they have to go to war. This is the book of Psalms 82:8 83 and 2. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. All right. So that during that 350-year period, where ultimately we were sold, all right, you have the sub-Saharan slave trade between, all right, the Arabs and the Hamites, which a lot of our people were involved in that as well. They were helping them. Okay. And we were eventually sold to the white man, the Edomite, and eventually traded throughout the four corners of the earth. They finally got the Israelites, the northern and southern kingdom, under their rule, under their foot, and they all enjoyed pleasures of us being cut off, us being, not being at one with our power. They were able to basically rule and basically, become rich off of our ignorance, off of the fact that they can forward their rhetoric and their gods and dominate trade and just be at the forefront. So they've all, tapped into cutting us off from being a nation. All right. They've all consulted together with one consent. They were all confederate against us. Okay. The tabernacles of Edom, the Edomites, the Ishmaelites, all right, the Arabs, the Moabites, and all of these nations, right, have had a part in our downfall. So the Lord is now gathering them together, all right, for the brawl for it all. As they're all right, in cahoots to, establish this NWA. They're all going into the MOTB infrastructure, but they don't agree. So they're going to go to war. And what the elites believe is that ultimately through this war, they're going to rise as the phoenix out of the ashes and set up a new world order. But things are going to go completely left for them. So the Lord says in Joel 3 and 2, as the nations are going to get ready to be judged, I will gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Yahweh Shaphat. Showing you the name of the Lord is in the scriptures, man. Yahweh's decision, Yahweh's judgment. Okay? It says, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. Okay? And they have cast lots for my people and have given a boy for an harlot and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. And this is American history. This is a history. This is world history as we know it. We were literally traded for wine and musket guns and tobacco. They literally would take our young men and force them into sexual slavery to produce more bucks, right? And it talks about all of the various different things that we're witnessing. All of these different nations are getting ready to pay, all right? So to jump down to the point, Joel 3 and 9, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war. See that? Prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near and let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Okay? And we're witnessing many nations, shaking off the wine of Babylon and the feminization they brought to their country and to their men. They're shaking it off, saying our men need to get, back into that mighty spirit, because now it's time for war. You can't go to war with a bunch of sodomite, weak, effeminate men. So the Lord is putting the spirit on these nations to tap into being mighty again. Let the heathen be awakened and come up to the valley of Yahweh Shaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. So this is what's getting ready to happen. And the Lord is putting the spirit, all right, on Esau, Edom, headed by the small hats, okay, to basically do things that are very important to this prophecy we're reading. All right. Israel is talking about a large-scale attack against Iranian-backed forces. All right. And they're going to drag America, pursuant to biblical prophecy, right, as we always bring this out, Jeremiah 50 and 45. Therefore hear ye the counsel that the Lord hath taken against Babylon, in his purposes that he hath proposed against the land of the Chaldeans. Surely the least of the flock, which is the small hats, shall draw them out. They're at the forefront of all of this confrontation you see worldwide. Okay? They're the pimp. America is the whore. Okay? Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. Your American government has been bought out. All your leaders have been bought and paid for by the small hat technocrats who are using America to be at the forefront of this NWO because they're not powerful enough. All right, the least of the flock. They need Babylon the Great to be the hammer for them to establish this. Okay, so they're calling on Babylon, okay, to help them in raiding Iran. And see, what we found out over these last couple of years is that Iran is more prepared than we thought. Okay, and when I say we, of course, we not a part of this, but we're talking about Babylon. Okay, Iran is basically more prepared than they thought. Iran has basically already penetrated Israel's Iron Dome. Okay, yes, Iranian missile attacks, particularly in June 2025, has successfully penetrated Israel's multi-layered air defense systems, including the Iron Dome. Okay, so what Israel found out is that, okay, you know, Iran is a bit more prepared than we thought. Now I want to get into a few videos and then we'll get more scriptures. Let's start, because a few videos I want to get into. Let's start with Myron Markass, which the dude is a demon. When he goes into certain talking points about politics, damn, so much happening, saving so many videos, it's hard to keep up. But let's go here. How Israel's about to drag America into a war with Iran. We'll get some of this, and we'll get a few other articles and videos, and hopefully y'all are edified. All right.
This is why the United States and the Israelis are reluctant to attack. But the Israelis are on a time crunch. And the Iranians said, we're not negotiating ballistic missiles. What does that mean? That means, let's get into some geopolitics. So as you guys know, Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu here. This is from, what's this?
And I know it's cringe to listen to him, but all of these people are cringe. All of these people who, you know, who are doing these videos, ultimately, they don't fully understand prophetically, biblically what's happening. But the Lord has given them understanding and insight unto things that we can use to further bring, all right, prophecy out and get understanding. Okay, so let's listen. This is Benjamin Netanyahu. I just finished a short, important visit in Washington. Now, they just had a secret meeting between Netanyahu and Trump. Okay, and after that, all of this stuff with Iran has popped up because Esau Edom has caught. So he needs not only war to take the attention off of the reality of what he is into, all right, but also the Lord is working on his mind to fulfill biblical prophecy, man. Okay, it's so much happening at once. All right, so we're condensing a lot of information into an hour or 45 minutes or whatever, so we can bring it to you.
From a couple hours ago? Did he post this today? Yeah, 3 hours ago. I just finished a short but important visit in Washington and talks with our great friend, the President Trump. There's a very close, very real, and very open relationship between us. Of course, the conversation focused on several issues, but in practice, on the negotiations with Iran. The president thinks that the Iranians have already learned who they're dealing with. He believes that the conditions he is creating, combined with the fact that they have certainly understand they made a mistake the previous time by not reaching an agreement, may create the conditions for achieving a good deal. You want to hear my opinion? I won't hide from you that I express general skepticism regarding the nature of any agreement with Iran. But I said if an agreement is indeed reached, then it must include the elements that are very important from our perspective, from Israel's perspective, and in my opinion, not only Israel's. It's not only the nuclear issue, it's also the ballistic missiles, and it's also the Iranian proxies. With that said, I would say the conversation was essentially concluded, although of course it also touched on Gaza, on the entire region, and on other general matters. In any case, another conversation with giant friend of the state of Israel, the likes of whom as there has never been.
אני סיימתי עכשיו ביקור
nigga talk in that language.
קצר, אבל הושג הסכם, כללים אחרים.
All right, that's with Israeli television. Okay, so what does this really mean in English? Let's break this down. So, in order to understand what they talked about, you need to know why Netanyahu won. So, as you guys know, Netanyahu was originally scheduled to go to the White House next week, but he decided to push it up a week because time is of the essence. Now, why is time of the essence?
They have but a short time. Prophetically, all right, what is we always bring it out. The devil is getting ready to come down with great wrath because he know that he has but a short time.
Let's talk about that. The reason why time is of the essence is because the Iranians have been steadily building back their capabilities, okay? And when I say their capabilities, their air defense is beefed up. They got a bunch of new Chinese technology and radars. They have rebuilt their ballistic missile program. They have somewhere between 1,800 to 2,000 plus stockpiled ballistic missiles of all kinds. They also have these missiles pointed and ready to go. On top of that, there are rumors that they've been able to acquire Chinese fighter jets, 5th generation, J-20s, and Su-57s from Russia. Now,
We just read in the book of Joel, the 3rd chapter, right? What did we just read? Showing you that biblical prophecy is being fulfilled every day. Joel 3:9, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war and wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near and let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords. So no longer don't focus on agriculture and the things that made your nations great in times past. No, get missiles, get defense systems. All right, and we know according to Ezekiel 38. Right, because Iran is, being talked about, but Russia will eventually, all right, step in as well. Because as we read Ezekiel the 38th chapter, right, Ezekiel 38:4. Okay, as a matter of fact, there was a different, there was a particular article that I was just looking at. Hold up, let's see if I can find it. Boom. And we'll tap into this. Turkey wants to replace Iran and encircle Israel. This is prophecy and what could be stepping stones to Gog and Magog prophecy. And the Gog and Magog prophecy is here in Ezekiel the 38th chapter, where the Lord is going to use, all right, Gog, which is Russia. All right. Magog just means of the land of Gog. All right. And again, originally these were Japhetic lands that were conquered by Edomites. So when it's speaking to the Gog and Magog, yes, those lands were originally given to the Japhetic people, but in prophecy, end time prophecy, these lands will be controlled by Edomites. And Russia, all right, is both basically under the control of Edomites right now. So ultimately the Lord, right, because remember, post World War II, NATO, all of these things were created to combat the dominance of the USSR, which, Soviet Union it disbanded. But now we're living in a time where the Lord has promised, Ezekiel 38:4, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, all right, bringing Russia back to that Soviet spirit, all right, that once, worried the West. See, post World War II, post Cold War, all of that, America, being at the forefront of NATO, dominated the earth. But all of that is changing. It says, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, Russia, and I will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. All right. So it's going to be a great company of nations, right, headed by Russia, right? And all of them are going to have what? A great company with bucklers and shields. So, ancient bucklers and shields were just little, swords and shields and, medals, but now knowledge has increased. So what this dude is going into, it says Persia, which that's Iran, Ethiopia, all right, the Cushites, Libya, all right, the Hamite nations, as we're going to all of this is happening right now. All of them with shield and helmet. Gomer, which is Turkey, and all his bands, the house of Togarmah, the north quarters, all his bands, and many people with thee. Turkey, right, is getting ready to break off from NATO, all right, and jump ship. As they've always played both sides, right, and we'll get into that. But all of this speaks to this prophecy. As we see, Persia is mentioned. Persia is Iran. They're part of this alliance that we're witnessing, all right, be formed right now. Okay, so listen to what he's saying.
It's not confirmed yet. It is not confirmed yet, but there has been some talks. There's been some plays. There's been some movement that it could happen. Now, what you guys need to understand when it comes to modern warfare, right? It's all based on theory. Due to the sensitive nature of military interactions and military procurement of technology, weapons, etc., people tend to keep their capabilities classified to a degree, right? You want to show enough that you can deter aggression while simultaneously holding some things back that you can use if they decide to not heed the warning.
And for 33 years, you know, Netanyahu has been accusing Iran of having weapons of mass destruction. There's been this constant back and forth. All right, you know, America, you need to go invade and check them for weapons of mass destruction. They shouldn't have weapons of mass destruction. You know, and Iran has showed, yeah, we do have this, but they're like, we don't have that, and yada, yada, yada. There's been a constant back and forth. All right. And again, remember, Iran does not have a Rothschild-backed central bank controlling them. All right. So there's a lot at stake here with getting control of this. And again, we see, all right, that they partially closed the Strait of Hormuz. All right. And there's a talking point that Russia is over there doing some form of military drill. As a matter of fact, let's look if we can find that. Russia military drills Iran Hormuz. All right. See if we can find that information. Okay, what Iran's naval exercise with China and Russia in the Strait of Hormuz actually means. See that? So, you know, why is Russia all of a sudden over there doing, you know, exercises over in the Strait of Hormuz for? Okay. What's going on? Again, this is Ezekiel 38 and everything that we're witnessing. But let's go.
From the deterrence. Okay? And over the past couple of weeks, Iran has been showing off their ballistic missiles that we've known about, the Fatah-1, the Fatah-2, the Corsair missile. They've shown off their ability to move these missiles in and out. They've shown their stockpile. They've shown that they're aggressively building missiles. They're manufacturing somewhere between 300 or so a month, right? So basically, this creates a problem for Israel. And the reason why it creates a problem for Israel is because Israel has interceptor missiles. Interceptor missiles are more expensive, they're rarer, and they're harder to make than the missiles that Iranians are making. So in other words, Israel is at an economic disadvantage when it comes to defending themselves against the Iranians. Now, if you guys remember prior to this...
That's why they need Babylon. And Babylon is going to be drawn into this conflict.
...of the war, the Israelis prioritized the nuclear program, and that was the chief reason they attacked the Iranians. Now, after the 12-day war, the Israelis found out that Iran had some very serious capabilities. So since Iran unleashed their capabilities, two things were shown. Number one, the Iranians have the ability to penetrate the Iron Dome, the David Sling, and the Arrow. Very bad, because Israel's defense is centered around that. Also, the Iranians depleted 25% of all Israel and United States interceptor missiles. In 12 days, they depleted 25% of stockpile. So this is why the Israelis begged for a ceasefire. Contrary to what mainstream media tells you, the Israelis begged for a ceasefire, because in a war of attrition, Iran could take a lot more hits than Israel can. So basically, the Israelis found out, oh wow, these guys can actually destroy us.
Nigga got hands. Right? We ain't the bully we thought we were. He can fight. And as we're going to show you, many of these Arab nations in this region that could actually help, you know, right, with the help of, you know, being allies to Babylon, are saying, no, we're not going to allow you to use, all right, our territories as a means to, you know, be an offense against Iran. And they're actually allying themselves against the small hat. See? And forming their own NATO, as we'll show you.
It's not just debt to Israel. It's they can actually make that happen.
They got hands.
The nuclear program moved down in importance, and now the ballistic missile program is the top priority, okay? The reason why the Israelis are so concerned is for a couple of reasons. Number one, the Iranians are making more missiles than the Israelis can manufacture interceptor missiles or procure interceptor missiles from the United States. Pete Hegseth and the Department of War, they said, hey, we need more of these things. They're going to only maybe make 400 a year. Meanwhile, the Iranians are making 300 a month. That's number one. Number two, Hezbollah is rearming. As you guys know, Hezbollah is in Lebanon, to Israel's north. They're the most competent ground force outside of the Iranian military, and they're rearming. They've had a couple years now to get their shit together. The Houthis are still a problem. The United States has not been able to fully stop them. The Houthis are very elusive. They kind of run and gun. They conduct a lot of piracy, and they're choking Israel financially. The Iraqis, But the bottom line is, the proxies are slowly recovering, especially Hezbollah. That's their biggest fear, right? And Hezbollah also has a stockpile of lots of rockets. So the Israelis have figured out that we don't have the interceptor missiles and the ability to actually defend ourselves if the Iranians launched all their rockets at us. Tel Aviv would be leveled, Haifa would be leveled, we'd be cooked. So this has Israel shook, because as each month passes, the Iranians acquire more missiles, and it becomes harder and harder to defend against it, and destruction of Israel becomes more and more realistic and probable, or possible, excuse me, possible and probable. And then on top of that, the Iranians have been buying a bunch of new hardware and software. We know that they've improved their air defense with Chinese technology. We know that they also have Russian technology. And what they're doing is they're layering the air defense so that if one system fails, they have another one. The problem last time was Iran only had their air defense and the Russian air defense, which, let's be honest, old, sucky. With the Chinese technology that can't be easily as hacked alongside the Russian technology.
And we're going to show you China is now being involved, right? So this is an alliance that's getting ready to oppose the small hat and the West. The West allies are going to turn on them, and it's getting ready to be ugly, prophetically, as America is being, touting itself as the leader of this NWO that they're setting up with this MOTB infrastructure.
Alongside their indigenous technology, now they're going to have a much better chance of detecting these stealth aircraft. And the Chinese radar and technology that they got is far more sophisticated and is designed to combat American technology, which is what the Israelis have, F-35s, etc. Another thing, not verified yet, but is very possible, the Iranians, we know for a fact, bought Su-57s. These are Russian fighter jets, 5th generation, 4th or 5th generation. Very high tech. And this has been confirmed because Russian defense contractors leaked. And that's what's going on. This is why the United States and the Israelis are reluctant to attack. But the Israelis are on a time crunch. And the Iranians said, we're not
They're on a time crunch.
negotiating ballistic missiles. What does that mean? That means war is imminent at this point. I think they said yesterday, we are not negotiating ballistic missiles. Now, the White House is giving mixed messages. One day Trump says, oh, we only care about nuclear. Another day it's like, oh, you guys can't have ballistic missiles. Then it's, you can't have ballistic missiles, but it's got to be 300 kilometers. So for the Iranians, I think they're buying time, because time helps the Iranians. They get more missiles, they rearm, they're getting Chinese technology, they're getting Russian technology, right? The fighter jets are paid for, by the way. Russian fighter jets, paid for. These joints right here.
See that? So let's get the book of Joel, chapter 2. This time, all right, because this is all key and strategic, all right, to end time prophecy. Okay, it's Joel chapter 2. Let's see here, and this is how our deliverance is going to come through this war. All right, this is the book. All right, and again, this ain't the end all be all, but these moves are being made because again, these rumors will eventually become physical. Joel 2:20, but I will move far off from you the northern army. All right, this is speaking to Babylon. And I will drive him into a land barren and desolate, with his face towards the east sea, all right, and his hinder part towards the utmost sea. And his stink shall come up, and his savor shall come up, because he have done great things. So the Lord is ultimately driving this man into this war. Now, let's go here to this map. All right. So the land where they're being driven is right here, because ultimately the small hat wants the Babylon's army, all right, and their allies to help them, all right, to basically invade, get control of the Strait of Hormuz, all right, which is where a lot of the oil, the oil deals go through. It's a particular percentage of oil deals that go through this particular region. This is a very important region. Okay, and again, you have the Persian Gulf. All right, let's read this particular prophecy one more time. All right, it says, give me 1 second here, Salaki, let me bear with me. So we're living in a beautiful time prophetically, man, and call halal Yahweh Bashim Yahshua for giving us the understanding, all right, to be able to tap into these things, all right, and because there's a lot of people, like the Elder Ariella was talking about, there's a lot of people who don't know what the hell is going on, okay? They have no idea what this means, okay? Give me 1 second here. All right. They have no idea what these things mean. Okay. Salakia. All right, this is the book of Joel 2:20. It says, "But I will remove far off from you the northern army, and I will drive him into a land buried and desolate, Saudi Arabia." And they've been there for years. All right. And they've even made deals with particular Arab nations that, hey, if you trade in, U.S. dollars to get your, trade your oil in U.S. dollars, we'll protect you. Now a lot of those deals have been, overwritten and changed, and we're living in a different time, man. Okay. It says with his face towards the east sea, right? And basically this is the Persian Gulf, right? His face towards the east sea, right? And it says here, right? And his hinder part towards the utmost sea, which is the Red Sea. All right. And this is a strategic point. All right. They've already did what they did in Iraq. All kind of proxy wars have been done in Syria, they've done all kind of wickedness over here because this is strategic and key. Okay. All right. To controlling to move forward with their NWO. Okay. But again, they're running into issues now because they want to invade Iran and take over this territory. But now they're finding out Iran has, technology that is capable of destroying them. You see that? And now, with this, the different strategic, because America has military bases all throughout this region. All right. And the Arab nations who are over here are like, no, you're not going to be able to use this base over here. We're not going to allow you to use this to attack Iran, which this speaks to the book of 2nd Esdras 15. All right. 2nd Esdras 15 and 28. Behold, in horrible vision, in an appearance there from the east, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried about as the east wind, and they which hear of them may fear and tremble, because the U.S. was used to, being allied with a lot of these different nations and having their will done through the dollar's dominance. All right. Also, the Carmanians, which is Iran, raging with wrath, shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood. Now, tapping into this very prophecy we're reading, we'll go back to it. Let's get this video here. All right, which there's more on this video. You can watch it yourself. Again, we're not driven by emotions. Though this dude is a asshole, and he kisses Esau, Edom's ass. All right, the Lord uses him and many others to bring out information that we can use, man. Okay, so we're going to now jump to this particular video. As you can see, the CJ Werleman show. It's happening. The Islamic NATO that ends Greater Israel. See, this is all prophecy. Okay, because Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, all of these nations are going to ally together for the purpose of coming up against the small hat, which America is going to be drawn into that war. So all of these things we're saying are key to our salvation.
Hello, it's your friend CJ Werleman, and in this episode, we reveal why a growing and strengthening alliance between Muslim-majority countries is reshaping the Middle East and presenting the state of Israel with an unprecedented existential threat. But first, please remember to like and subscribe to our show and ensure your notifications are turned on so you enjoy Under NATO has been kicked around for years, mostly under a binding collective defense obligation akin to what Europeans and Americans enjoy under NATO.
An Islamic NATO, and look who's there, Turkey. See that? And what has Turkey recently said? All right, they want to place Iran and encircle Israel. They're tired of them. Okay? Call halal Yahweh Bashim Yahshai.
Has been kicked around for years, mostly because the potential strategic benefits are obvious, given it would include a combination of Saudi money, Turkish technology, and Pakistani nukes, therefore constituting a triumvirate of military, economic, and technological firepower against the number one threat to peace and security in the Muslim world, the State of Israel. A stark reality given the Zionist military bombed and or invaded 9 Muslim-majority countries during the last year.
Look how many, and somehow they're the victim. But look at all of these strikes over the last years. They've targeted 9 countries, right?
Even the Zionist military bombed and or invaded 9 Muslim-majority countries during the last year alone.
Israel has attacked more countries than any other country this year. Over 10,600 attacks on 6 countries and 3 territorial waters. These maps show where those attacks took place.
When Israel
And who aids them in those attacks? Okay? Babylon, the EU, NATO. But now, all right, things are shifting.
isn't bombing or invading Muslim countries unprovoked, then it's violating ceasefire agreements with its neighbours, having violated its ceasefire with Gaza by bombing it more than 1,000 times in 80 days, adding thousands of more civilians to a death toll that has already surpassed hundreds of thousands. A similar story can be told in Lebanon, proving yet again that Israel can never be trusted under any circumstances, especially when it's even willing to deceive and dupe its #1 ally and benefactor.
I didn't like plenty of things I saw yesterday. I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal. They didn't have to unload. And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very...
And this is just theater for you people because they're seeing people waking up to what's happening, right? So this is all theater to get you people to believe that they're really, all right, against what Israel's doing, right? The least of the flock is going to draw Babylon into this war. Call halal, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, man.
strong. But in all fairness, Israel unloaded a lot. And now I hear Israel just went out because they felt it was violated by one rocket that didn't land anywhere. That's not what we want, I'll tell you. And I'm telling you, I'm not happy about that, Israel, either.
Israel also bombed Qatar, home to the largest US military base in the Middle East, just months after the Qatari government gifted Trump a $1 billion airplane, proving no Muslim country is safe from attack, even those with the strongest of ties to the United States government. Which is why Turkish President Recep Erdogan reignited the idea of an Islamic NATO in September 2024 by calling for Muslim unity against what he described as a growing threat of Israeli expansionism.
İstanbul'un kaderi Şam'ın kaderinden, Bağdat'ın, Kahire'nin, Sana'nın kaderinden, İslamabad'ın, Kabil'in, Trablus'un, Tahran'ın kaderinden, Mekke ile Medine'nin ve elbette
These are the dragons of Arabia, man. Okay? And Turkey is going to jump ship, right? Let's get the book of, and Russia is going to be at the forefront of all of these nations together. Okay? The Israel, of course, don't stand a chance, but Babylon, okay, even with the sword that they've been blessed with, they're not going to stand a chance. This is the book of Jeremiah 51:27. Set ye up a standard in the land, blow the trumpet among the nations, prepare the nations against her, call together against her the kingdoms of Ararat. Ararat is Turkey, Mini, Armenia, Ashkenaz, Germany, which all of these nations are in cahoots. Although they have alliances, now they're in cahoots because of the folly of the small hat in the West. Appoint a captain against her, which is Russia, calls the horses to come up as the rough caterpillar. They're going to put all of their power together. Prepare against her, all right, the nations with the king of the Medes. The Medes in end time prophecy is Russia, all right, as we always show you. When you look at where the ancient Medes ruled, okay, ultimately that it borders where the USSR, okay, ancient Russia, the Soviet Union ruled the territory. So this points to Russia, and we always show you the map, okay? So prepare against her the nations with the king of the Medes. See, the Medes in end time prophecy speaks to Russia. Okay, let's do this. Let's go to Isaiah 13. All right. It says Isaiah 13. Babylon will fall to the Medes. See, now the ancient Neo-Babylonian Empire in Daniel, the 5th chapter, right? Let me show you this real quick. Daniel 5, right? Daniel 5:28, speaking to the Neo-Babylonian Empire headed by Nebuchadnezzar, and his son Belshazzar was ruling here. It says, Peres, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. See, and that was in ancient times, but now in end time prophecy, okay, the Medes, Isaiah 13 and 17, right? I will stir up the Medes against them, which shall not regard silver. As for gold, they shall not delight in it. Russia is at the forefront of what you call the BRICS, where they're looking for options outside of the U.S. dollar to trade. Okay, and we know the elites are got their hands in that, but it still fulfills prophecy. So, all right, so I will stir up against them the Medes. Now, let me see if I could just ask. Let's ask this question here. Does the USSR border the territory once ruled by the ancient Medes? Yes, see that? The USSR bordered the territory once ruled by the ancient Medes. The Soviet Union shared a southern border with Iran, which corresponds with the core region of the Median Empire, located and presented today in northwest Iran, parts of neighboring countries like Azerbaijan. All right, the Median territory historically located in the region. So this is all prophecy. Okay? So, I mean, you could look up maps, right, that'll show you, but this is where the ancient Medes rule. So in end time prophecy, the Medes ain't talking about, okay, the Shemitic tribe that ruled the Mede Empire. It's talking about Esau, Edom, which he's of Shem, right? Which that's another thing people bug out on, talking about he's Ashkenaz because he calls himself the Ashkenazi Jew. All right, but no, man, this, you know, you can look up the map. When we're reading this in Isaiah 13, behold, I will stir up, which Russia means to rouse. I will stir up the Medes against them, which shall not regard silver and gold, and they shall not delight in it. Their bows shall also dash the young men to pieces, and they shall have no pity of the fruit of the womb. This is those Russian military men. And what does it say? In Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. See, it shall never be inhabited. So this ain't talking about ancient Babylon that was taken down by the Medes and the Persians. All right, under, you know, this is talking about now. See that? So going back here, all right, Jeremiah 51 and 28, prepare against her the nations with the kings of the Medes, all right, the captains thereof, and all the rulers thereof, and all the land of his dominion. And the land shall tremble in sorrow, all right, for every purpose of the Lord shall be performed against Babylon, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without inhabitants. So all of these things are happening, all right. America is going to be drawn into defending the small hat. See, as we always read, the least of the flock. Okay, but see, we see all kind of alliances, because what did Erdogan, who's a member of NATO, by the way, what did he read? Erdogan, all right, Ararat, all right. It's also called Gomer in Ezekiel 38. These are all these ancient regions, right? Turkey bashes Israel, calls on Muslims to unite against the West. And Russia's going to be with the shits. They're going to all come together, man. This is what's being formulated right now.
Ve elbette Kudüs'ün ve Gazze'nin kaderinden ayrı değildir. Ümmetin sesini ve vicdanını temsil eden teşkilatımızın bu toplantısında İsrail'in tüm bölgeyi yangın yerine çeviren politikalarına karşı duruşumuzu açıkça dünya kamuoyuna duyurmamız gerekiyor.
This was Erdogan making a direct and urgent call for Muslim powers to isolate, encircle, and threaten Israel. A call that has invoked derision, skepticism.
See, it's call, encircle Israel. All right. So what do we read? Ezekiel 38 is going to be a bunch of nations, all right, with their, you know, defense and military and missile weapons systems, all right, uniting with Russia, Iran, Ethiopia, Libya, okay, all of these various different nations. Gomer, that's Turkey. Togomar, that's Turkey. All right, Ezekiel 38:7, be thou prepared for thyself and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. So Russia is going to be at the forefront of all of these alliances. And after many days thou shalt be visited. In the latter years thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword. Okay, and that speaks to Israel and, all right, America. Literally, it's going to end up in America being brought into a war and destroyed. See what I'm saying? So we're living in these times where they're going to all surround, all right, Israel. As we look at, and if we had a map, all of these different nations that are allied together, they're going to surround Israel, and America's going to be drawn into that war. And we have lessons going into Ezekiel the 38th chapter. Let's listen to a little bit more here.
And even ridicule from Zionists, who have mocked Turkey and other Muslim countries for having achieved little in the 18 months since Erdogan gave that speech. They couldn't be more wrong, because every military strategist in Tel Aviv and Washington, D.C. knows damn well that an Islamic NATO drastically changes the balance of power in the Middle East.
The Turkish threat is emerging. I want to be very clear. Turkey and Qatar have gained influence in Syria, are seeking influence elsewhere and everywhere throughout the region. And from here, I warn, Turkey is the new Iran.
Turkey is the new Iran. Now we got to worry about their weapons of mass destruction, because Turkey is like the number 2 or number 3, all right, top military within NATO. So we're living in some beautiful times, man. In the shifting sands of Middle Eastern geopolitics, which we know the Middle East is a political term that's not true. It says Turkey under President, all right, Erdogan, is emerging as a formidable force poised to supplant Iran's waning influence and forge a strategic noose around Israel. See? So this is a biblical prophecy. We could read more into the article, but we don't have, a lot of time. So now Iran, as the scriptures say, let the weak say I am strong. Okay? Joel 3:10, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say I am strong. So all of these Arab nations, right, which basically we know they wouldn't be able to combat, Babylon like that, right? Now they're all coming together like, you know what? And I typed this in. Why are the Arab nations considering an Arab NATO? What could be the end result of this? Arab states have periodically discussed forming an Arab NATO, often called the Middle East Strategic Alliance, MISA, for several overlapping reasons. The idea isn't new, but it resurfaces whenever regional conflict intensifies. All right. Why Arab nations are considering an Arab NATO? Containment of Iran. The primary driver is concern over Iran's regional influence. All right, a Muslim country. Military, political, and ideological. Iran-backed groups operate, all right, in Lebanon, Hezbollah, Yemen, the Houthis, Iraq, and Syria. Okay, and Myron went into some of that, right? Gulf states sees this as a asymmetric warfare rather than conventional conflict. A collective defense pact would deter attacks on shipping lanes, oil infrastructure, and borders, which Israel has been doing that. This mirrors how NATO was formed to contain the Soviet Union. Okay? NATO was born to what? All right, combat the Soviet Union, which eventually disbanded. Now it's back strong. Security fatigue with the U.S. Arab states, especially Saudi Arabia and the UAE, are reassessing reliance on Washington. Perceived U.S. Retrenchment from the Middle East. Inconsistent enforcement of red lines. Desire for regional self-reliance rather than dependence. Because remember, the U.S. made deals with the UAE that basically we will protect you if you trade your oil in dollars. Which again, I believe a couple of years ago that deal ended. Although America still has, their hands in all of that. Okay, again, we're witnessing a shift away from dependence on the West. An Arab alliance would still coordinate with the U.S. See, that's what we're witnessing, but not be fully dependent on it. Normalization with Israel changed the map. Following the Abraham Accords, quiet security coordination with Israel has expanded. Shared intelligence on Iran, missile defense cooperation, naval security in the Red Sea and Persian Gulf. While Israel would not formally be in an Arab NATO, it would likely function as a de facto strategic partner. Okay, and they all just go eventually destroy her. Okay? Economic energy, joint structure, yada, yada, yada. How could Russia get involved in this? Okay, so an Arab NATO is less about launching wars and more about preventing them through collective deterrence. Whether it stabilizes or destabilizes the region depends on how unified the members truly are. And what we're reading in prophecy, right? Let's get it in the GNT, see what it says. All right. Second Esdras 15:28. Then in the east you will suddenly see a fearsome sight. Arab armies with many chariots will advance like dragons. See that? All right. As soon as they start out, the sound of their hissing will spread across the world via the news and bring fear and trembling on everyone who hears it. And then you're going to start to see an uptick in U.S. media saying that there's Islamic terror here in the States, this and that. This is what we're already witnessing, right? They're going to play the victim in this and justify your doing what they usually do, wickedness. Okay? But I asked, how could Russia get involved in this? Let's see. All right. Gave 2 responses. I'll just take any one. Let's just do this one. See what it says. Because it's all prophecy. Russia could get involved in an emerging Arab NATO scenario in indirect but highly consequential ways. Moscow strategy in the Middle East is rarely about formal alliances, but about leverage, access, and disruption. Russia aligns more openly with Iran, as we read in Ezekiel 38. Okay. Persia will be one of the main nations allied with, all right, Russia. Okay. If an Arab military bloc forms primarily to contain Iran, Russia would likely deepen its partnership with Tehran, Iran. Okay. Expand weapons transfer. All right. Air defense, drones, missiles, intelligence sharing, joint military exercising, coordination propositions at the UN. So basically they will be a guard unto these Arab nations. That's basically what eventually would happen. Okay. Russia already relies on Iranian drones in Ukraine. So this relationship is mutually reinforcing. The end result, a de facto Russia-Iran axis counterbalancing the Gulf of Arab states, the U.S., and Israel. This is Ezekiel 38th chapter. Syria becomes Russia's pressure point. Russia's strongest military foothold in the Arab world is Syria. All right. Key assets, Khimini Air Base, Tartus Naval Base. If Arab NATO expands, Russia could allow Iran and Hezbollah free movement in Syria. And that's America going to go crazy on that, right? Israel going to go crazy on that, right? Increase air defense coverage and restrict Israeli strikes. Use Syria as a staging and signal zone. End result, Syria becomes a tripwire theater where escalation begins without formal war declarations. So it's all going to lead to war. Okay? undermining Arab NATO from the inside, most likely, rather than opposing the bloc directly. Russia prefers fragmentation tactics, arms sales to different Arab states with incompatible systems, energy deals that divide interests, diplomatic outreach to states hesitant about confrontation, Iraq, Algeria. They've got enough smoke, so they're like, man, look. Information warfare portraying Arab NATO as a Western proxy. All right. Russia has done this successfully in Europe to weaken the NATO cohesion. So, Ezekiel 38 told Russia, I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth and all thine armies, horses and horsemen, all of them with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling sword. Persia, Ethiopia, Libya, all right, with all of them. Okay, and let's just ask a quick question. How does Ethiopia and Libya and Turkey play into this? Let's just see what it says. How does, all right, Ethiopia, Libya, and Turkey play into this all? See what it says. Ethiopia, Libya, and Turkey each matter for different strategic reasons, but together they form a southern central northern arc that can either stabilize or seriously complicate an emerging Arab NATO order. All right. And when it's all said and done, they're all going to come together. Okay. So, and we'll we'll go more into this. Let's get the videos. Because I got a few more I want to show you.
Erdogan is sophisticated, dangerous, and he seeks to encircle Israel.
Tiny top.
We can't close our eyes again.
Israelis notice because they have spent decades sowing division, chaos and violence in the region to ensure Arab countries and the rest of the Muslim world never unite against it. But for Israel, these good old days came to a crashing end on September 17 last year, when Saudi Arabia and Pakistan signed the Strategic Mutual Defense Agreement, which declares that any aggression against either nation will be considered an act of aggression against both, meaning Saudi Arabia becomes the first Muslim country to enjoy security under Pakistan's nuclear umbrella.
Saudi Arabia and Pakistan signed a landmark security pact on September 17th that could reshape Gulf security. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif shook hands on the agreement, declaring that an attack on one would be treated as an attack on both.
See that?
Pakistan's Defense Minister Khwaja Asif went further, suggesting Riyadh could even gain access to Islamabad's nuclear program if needed, echoing Turkey's warnings that Israeli aggression threatens the entire region. Whether by design or not, the pact sends a clear signal. The global order is shifting. And when old alliances falter, new ones carry weight.
Israel is now staring down its worst of all nightmares because it has now lost its #1 strategic advantage, the implied threat of using nuclear weapons without having to worry about a counterstrike from its adversaries. A nightmare that's about to get considerably worse for the Zionist state now that Turkey has entered advanced talks to join Saudi Arabia and Pakistan in this mutual defense pact. A move that will create a new military bloc in the Middle East, linking 3 of the region's largest countries, each with their own unique capabilities and advantages. Oil-rich Saudi Arabia is the Arab world's only G20 economy. Pakistan is the Muslim world's only nuclear-armed state. And Turkey, which straddles both Asia and Europe, possesses the second largest army among NATO members. And added to this is the fact that both Pakistan and Turkey have become major weapons manufacturers and exporters, with Turkey supplying drones to Ukraine to use against Russia, while at the same time it rebuilds the Syrian army to help the new Syrian government resist and deter.
And eventually Turkey is going to side with Russia. This is prophetically what we're reading about in Ezekiel, the 38th chapter. Okay?
Israeli attacks and incursions. This newly emerged Islamic NATO is more than just words on paper. It has already expanded military interaction, training coordination, and defense industrial cooperation.
All right, let's read it again. 2nd Esdras 15 and 28, behold, an horrible vision, and the appearance thereof from the east, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon the earth, and they which hear them may fear and tremble. The Carmenians, or Iran, raging in wrath, shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood, with great power. All right, shall they come and join battle with them, okay, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. Now, this can be an actual attack in Babylon the Great, which is spiritually the modern day Assyria, all right, or it can be an attack on one of their bases abroad, which is just like an attack on American soil. All right, you attack American base abroad, it's the same as attacking America, period. So what we're getting ready to see is some kind of attack, whether it be propaganda. All right, we're getting ready to see. This is how I see it. Some type of move is getting ready to be made where America is going to say they're a threat. They've been attacked. All right, they're going to blame it on the Arab, the Muslim nations. They're going to blame it on Iran. Okay, this is going to be used as a means to shut things down here in Babylon the Great. Right, and it says, and then shall the dragons have the upper hand, remembering their nature. They're wild. All right, they don't have a lot of order, right? This is why they needed Babylon, all right, to assist them, all right, because they prefer loyalty over, you know, they'll set a guy over their defense and war department, talking about the Arabs, that nigga don't know how to read, he don't know nothing, but they trust him. This is why America has been able to go over there and, you know, we'll defend you if you trade in dollars. And again, all of these alliances are being broken, and everybody is now having an evil eye towards America. So the dragons of Arabia are getting ready to have the upper hand, remembering their nature, and they shall turn themselves, conspiring together in great power to persecute them. All right. So this is what's getting ready to happen. These shall be troubled, bled, and shall keep silence through their power. They're going to use their media to act as if everything is all right, and shall flee from these different regions, all right, where, you know, ultimately they thought they were going to use to invade Iran, right? Because many Arab nations are telling America, right, no, you're not going to be able to use our regions to invade Iran. In fact, we're getting ready to ally together and come to defend Iran, because we know the wickedness you're trying to come over here and do. This is what we see happening, man, through the Holy Spirit. This is all prophecy, okay?
More importantly, it provides each of these three countries the space to step out from underneath America's shadow by allowing each nation individually or collectively to take action against Israel without threats of US sanctions or restrictions.
Now enter Turkey. Turkey's inclusion changes the scale and depth of this arrangement.
Turkey is also going to be involved.
Ankara is no longer just a defense supplier. It is a systems architect. Its defense industry has proven expertise in avionics, sensors, electronic warfare, unmanned systems, and combat integration. Pakistan has already benefited from Turkish cooperation in drones and aerospace subsystems. Saudi Arabia brings capital, scale, and strategic reach. Together, this creates a closed-loop defense ecosystem. Pakistan provides a proven fighter platform and operational doctrine. Turkey contributes advanced subsystems, mission electronics, and future generation design input.
So they got it going on. One more video real quick. All right. There's so much happening. It's going to have to be a part 2. All right.
This is pretty shocking. And I've actually, I said this myself. I said, guys, you know, look out, watch. If and when Iran does fall, the next boogeyman is going to be Turkey and ISIS. And I said that very clear, and I have 2 very good reasons for why I believed it was going to be both Turkey and ISIS as the next big boogeyman that Israel is going to start talking about. So former Israeli Prime Minister Bennett warns that Turkey poses a new threat. I must tell the truth. Israel's current leadership divided us and is dividing us now more than ever. And he basically says it's the new.
Again, they're not going to stop. Someone put it in a comment. These people are exhausting. It's ridiculous. Okay. Oh man, it's funny because countries like Iran, Russia, China, and Turkey managed to get along despite their differences. Only Israel insists on conformity.
He flat out says it's the new Iran. Former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett on Tuesday addressed the 2026 Conference of Presidents, and he stated that warning that Turkey President Erdogan poses a new strategic threat to Israel. He described Erdogan as a sophisticated and dangerous adversary who wants to surround Israel and cautioned that the country must not turn a blind eye again. He highlighted describing the growing axis of concern in the region, linking Turkey, Qatar, the Muslim Brotherhood with Pakistani nuclear capabilities, saying the alliance is attempting to incite hostility against Israel, including influence in Saudi Arabia. So, and he says it's similar, they are feeding a new monstrous axis of the Muslim Brotherhood similar to the Iranian one. All right, so before Iran's even gone, they're already figuring out what's going to be the new boogeyman and how do we stop this. Now, it's so interesting. There's a...
And they're so proudly, Iran is going, well, hey, it ain't over. They think that they're just gonna be able to go up in there and just, we got Iran, that'll be easy work. It ain't gonna work like that, man. These devils are drunk on their own pride, man. Okay? To bomb or not to bomb, Trump now says he'll decide on whether he'll bomb Iran in the next 10 to 15 days. Okay? All kind of stuff is happening, man. And as we're showing you, this all fulfills biblical prophecy, man. There's so much happening, man. It's like, damn. Let's go here.
All right, welcome to the show, y'all. It is Wednesday, February 18th, and I have a really, really important show for you today. So we're going to get to some breaking news in just a second. It is massive, massive news. But before I get to that, let me just tell you, in this show, we also have, I think we may have found the worst Epstein files. I think we may have found them. I'm going to share them with you right here. You do not want to miss that. We also have Trump's secret money laundering that he consists of 2 aircraft carriers, 12 warships, hundreds of fighter jets, and multiple air defense systems. More than 150 U.S. military cargo flights have moved weapons, systems, and ammunition to the Middle East, and another 50 fighter jets in 24 hours have been sent, including F-35s, F-22s, and F-16s. Oil prices are surging above $64 a barrel on this news, okay? So this is a disaster, y'all. I warned you a million times over. When you look at the Iraq War, we were there for over 20 years. It was a catastrophe. We killed hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians. We displaced millions. Never mind the torture black sites that we set up. Never mind our own soldiers being killed. Never mind the fact that you broke the region, and that led to the rise of Al-Qaeda, and later on led to the rise of ISIS. Now we're talking about a country that is way bigger and way more advanced than Iraq. And if what they're doing here is indeed a full-fledged war, then this is going to be an absolute catastrophe. In fact, they're talking about, this is going to be sustained, it could last weeks, it could last months. The fact that they're saying it's going to last weeks or months is the reddest of all red flags. Because back at the beginning of the Iraq War, they were saying the same thing. They said, this won't be a 2-year operation. It'll be maybe 2 weeks or maybe 2 months. Now we're getting the exact same talking points, y'all. The exact same ones. All right, we have to take a look at this as well. Non-stop tankers on the move. Absolutely nuts. So here we go. This is what's currently happening as we speak. We're getting more fighter jets in place. We're getting more warships in place. In fact, there was reporting a couple weeks ago that the reason we didn't attack Iran at the time is because we had so many of our ships were surrounding Venezuela. Because, of course, they did the illegal and offensive war against Venezuela, where they kidnapped, abducted Maduro, and are now stealing Venezuelan oil. But we had plenty of our military assets in the region at the time, which made it so there wasn't the correct number to go after Iran. Basically, Israel was even saying, hey, we'd be sitting ducks in this scenario. We don't have enough support here. So this is where we're at now, y'all. This is where we're at. All right, now this is the one that, holy shnikes, this should be front of mind for everybody at the moment. So this was just posted on 4chan. Let me read you this. I posted yesterday with a 36-hour timeline. We are now in the 24-hour window. Look for a significant number of Iranian leadership to be exterminated. The leadership of Iran is made up of a secret council of 22 military and political leaders, that's the Revolutionary Guard, who meet regularly in a bunker in Tehran. One of their members is a Mossad agent, so they've infiltrated them. Needless to say, this group goes first. Israel knows after the last few years, this is the time to end this shit show, and tactical nukes will take out most of Iran's missile infrastructure in the first strike. Tehran will go in the first wave with a false flag attack set up for Israel to kick things off. So according to this guy, they're saying, Israel and the U.S. are going to pretend like Iran attacked some U.S. ship in...
Ain't that what we just said? I didn't even watch this video. Ain't that what I just said? I could see possibly happening. Literally. They're going to blame them for some form, as they always do, of attack either here or on... Man, woo.
The last few years, this is the time to end this shit show, and tactical nukes will take out most of Iran's missile infrastructure in the first strike. Tehran will go in the first wave with a false flag attack set up for Israel to kick things off. So according to this guy, they're saying, Israel and the U.S. are going to pretend like Iran attacked some U.S. ship in the region or some, Israeli fighter jet or whatever it may be. And then they're going to say, we were attacked first, so now it's all systems go. We didn't start it. but it's going to be a false flag attack. All right, more. Venezuela was a test for what is happening in Iran. A large part of the Iranian military and leadership will be vaporized in the opening salvos. Israel will use tactical nukes to take out Iranian missiles and their bases.
So, hey, be on the lookout. I asked here, how could Ethiopia, Libya, and Turkey and Iran joining together with Russia, in the grand scheme of things, work out? It says, here's a realistic geopolitical breakdown of how Ethiopia, Libya, and Turkey, Ezekiel 38, and Iran could be used as pieces in a larger strategy to join with Russia in opposition against Western powers in Israel, but only under specific conditions, such as a bloc would face deep contradictions. Let's break this down. All right. Let's see here, Libya. I mean, it breaks it down. I don't feel like reading all of this. All right. Bottom line, there is no clear pathway today for Ethiopia, Libya, and Turkey and Iran together with Russia to form a cohesive alliance that will coordinate military against the Israel of the West. Right. What can happen is overlapping interests and proxy engagements that indirectly complicate Western or Israeli strategic priorities. But this is not the same as a unified coalition. However, prophecy says otherwise. See, again, ChatGPT has been compromised. So, they used to go harder. Now they do their hardest to protect the West and the small hat. But we know prophetically all of these nations are going to align, and there's going to be a great shaking. All right. Ezekiel 38:19, for in my jealousy and in my fire and my wrath have I spoken. Surely in that day there should be a great shaking in the land of Israel. All right, so that the fishes of the sea and the fowls of heaven and the beasts of the field and all creeping things that creep upon the earth and all men that are upon the face of the earth shall shake at my presence, and the mountains shall be thrown down, and the steep palaces shall fall, and every wall shall fall to the ground. All right, I will call for a sword against him throughout all my mountains. Thus said the Lord, every man's sword shall be against his brother. Okay, and it's going to be an overflowing fire, which is going to draw America in, and Babylon the Great is going to be destroyed. This is what we're on our way to. One more real quick. I'll just play a few seconds of it, a few minutes. But China. Vows to wipe out Israel.
Hello, it's your friend CJ Wellerman. And in this episode, we'll look at China's vow to counter American and Israeli aggression around the world. But first, please remember to like and subscribe to our show. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a single episode. Now let's get into it. In a recent tweet, I asked whether Trump's invasion of Venezuela lit a match for a US-China war, given Beijing was the South American country's #1 oil customer. A move that puts the United States in almost total control over the world's oil reserves, given the US effectively rules the Persian Gulf and Red Sea through its Arab and Zionist puppet regimes. This has caused China's energy anxiety to spike upwards, remembering that more than 50% of its oil and gas imports come from US allies in the Middle East, making Beijing feel completely boxed in by American-Israeli aggression and imperialism, which is why Beijing is vowing retaliation against any country that supports US efforts to isolate China economically.
The United States has brazenly resorted to the use of force against Venezuela and demanded that America First be applied when Venezuela disposes of its own oil resources. This is a typical act of bullying, a serious violation of international law, and a grave infringement on Venezuela's sovereignty that also severely undermines the rights of Venezuelan people. China strongly condemns this.
They say those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it, a warning that the Zionist-American alliance seems determined to ignore. Call it arrogance, call it hubris, call it whatever you want, but similar moves against Japan in the 1930s ignited the Second World War in the Western Pacific.
Why did Japan attack Pearl Harbor? U.S. oil embargo. The U.S. cut off Japan's access to oil, steel, and other resources in response to Japan's invasion of China and expansion in Asia. Japan needed these resources for its military. Expansion goals. Japan wanted to dominate Asia and the Pacific, the greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere, without U.S. interference.
China opposes the use of force in international relations, but it also stated that it will not hesitate to deploy its military power if its strategic interests are directly threatened. But for now, it's using its power and influence to launch a campaign to expel Israel from the United Nations. Put simply, Israel and the United States are fooling themselves if they don't believe Beijing won't retaliate for toppling the Iranian regime, which provides China with more than 80% of its shipped oil, therefore making US Israeli-led regime change efforts in Iran an existential threat to the Chinese economy, leaving Beijing with no other choice than to send weapons and missile defense systems to Tehran. Nothing I'm saying here should be misinterpreted as tacit support for the Chinese.
So while Iran looks weak on paper, they have a lot of support from, Russia, these Arab nations, now China. Okay, and things are going to get ugly for Babylon again. Okay, there's going to be a company of nations headed by Russia that are going to put themselves in array against Babylon, all right, starting with Israel, man. So everything that we are witnessing, I mean, there's so many articles to go into. There's so much happening, I just wanted to give you an overall understanding of what's happening. We are on our way, all right, to, the end of this man. He's all spiraling out of control. But again, prepare for some type of event to happen that's going to justify them to lock Babylon down, okay, and justify bringing about, the digital IDs and, furthering their plan, all right. Again, through craft, through his policy, he's going to cause craft to prosper in his hand. So through fear, enchantments, okay, and they're going to push forth all kind of confusion, man. So, hey, fret not, man. Just understand all of these things are a part of how we are delivered. All right, World War III is imminent. All right, hey, stay locked in. All right, I know it's a lot of information. There's even certain things that needed to be expounded on more, but the Spirit brought out what the Spirit brought out. Hopefully, I'll edified on to the